G'day guys, welcome back to the channel and to this video where I'm going to do kind of a comparison. This isn't really a head-to-head duel because I think the outcome should be well and truly a foregone conclusion in many respects, because we're really talking about a comparison between a roughly 500 USD watch compared to a roughly 5,000 USD watch, you know, nearly 10 times the pricing difference here. So on the left, I have here the Steinhart Ocean 44 GMT ceramic, which I reviewed a little while back. So this one, the MSRP for this particular GMT watch is 560 USD. If you looked at the Ocean 44 three-hander, you know, just a simple time one, non-GMT, you're looking at about 520 USD for that particular version. On the right, I have here the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean, again provided by my friend Graham. Thank you for making this available for reviews and comparisons. So this one is a Planet Ocean from 2005, originally produced in 2005. It's no longer in production, and the original MSRP was 4,500 USD. If of course you looked at a more up-to-date current version, for example, the model starting with 215/30/44 with ceramic and the anti-magnetic movement, the upgraded caliber, that's 6,500 USD as an MSRP. So, you know, well beyond 10 times the price of the watch on the left there. So why did I choose these two watches? Well, apart from the price comparison, well, they are both big, heavy, Swiss-made automatic dive watches, right? I mean, Steinhart is a German company, but the watches are Swiss-made. They both have 316L steel, screw-in case backs and crowns, of course, you know, 300 meter or greater water rating, unidirectional dive bezels, 120 click. They both have great lume. You know, this one I think is slightly better, but they both perform pretty well in my experience. But what of the value proposition? What is the difference you get between a $500 watch and a $5,000 watch in these examples? Let's dive into it. So again, not really a head-to-head duel. I'm just highlighting the differences that you're getting in the caliber. Well, you know, the Steinhart, as I've highlighted before, is an ETA 2893-2, so this is a GMT movement. Steinhart uses Elabore grade in these watches, and they are excellently regulated. And this was well within the plus or minus 7 seconds per day. But you know, you have to give it to Omega. You know, even though I've given an 8 for the Steinhart, I haven't altered this score from the previous comparison that I've done for the Steinhart. Well, I've got to hand the caliber to the Omega because, right, this is a ETA 2892-A2, but with the Co-Axial modification, right, 48-hour power reserve versus 40 hours because of the coaxial architecture, and this is a cost chronometer. So I don't think there's any controversy at all that you got to hand the caliber to the Omega. All right, design. Well, you know, Steinhart is an homage. It's a Rolex deep sea homage, right? I think there's no question, very little question about that. And Wells is very well executed. I think it's a very nicely done watch. You know, Omega is an original, you know, pretty iconic design. I think there's no controversy here. You have to hand the design over to Omega. Yes, they both function excellently as dive watches, as they are meant to. You know, even in that respect, I think I'm going to hand it to the Omega because, you know, functionally it is also better design, and I'll go into that in the performance in a little while. Okay, so design 8 versus 9. Again, I think objectively that there's little question in that. Quality. Now, I really like the Steinhart. I really like, you know, how they finish their watches, the tightness, the fit and finish. But in hand, again, you have to hand it to the Omega. Like, you know, if you look at this closely in hand, it's very, very difficult or nearly impossible to show with my camera. The brushing is finer. You know, they finished it in you know, a very high level. You know, polishing. You know, the transition to that to that angled edge there that is well known in the Seamaster, that curved edge there with a polished finish. The smoothness, the rounded feel in the hand, I think definitely the quality has to be given to Omega, and as well as the that very well known engraved, very very nicely engraved craze backs that they do, the Seamaster. I am in no doubt in my mind, when you hold these in hand, whilst the Steinhart is excellent, the Omega is definitely, very tangibly different as you hold it in your hand. So I've given 9 again, 9 versus 8, similar for the first 3 categories there. All right, moving on, style. So this one again, very, very subjective, but I think because the Steinhart is an homage, you got to knock off points. Maybe you would even give it a 6 or lower. I think the Omega has a very nice style. I really like the Planet Ocean design. Maybe I'm a bit more partial towards the Seamaster 300M diver, but I really like this design as well. It's got its own feel. Those arrow hands, the dial, the way they've etched it and laid it out. I have to give it to Omega again. I think this outdoes definitely the homage style of the Steinhart. Even though I've really enjoyed this, I've really liked how this looks. That rehaut flange, the wording really catches the eye. It is not quite up there with the Omega in my subjective opinion. Admittedly the most subjective category of all, I think, style. Okay, performance-wise, right? I think this has got to be the highest performance diver that I've had my hands on in the whole year plus that I've done this channel. Right, it's got the 600 meter. It's got very, very good loom. Right, the C3 Super Luminova, excellently performing, as good as anything, including my Oris Aquastate. The bezel visibility is excellent, and the bezel function is excellent as well. This is really one of the best bezels that I've had. Even though it's nice and tight, it is also very easy to turn because of the design of the bezel edge here. It's 10 out of 10 for me. I haven't seen a diver functionally as good as this, so far. There probably are better ones. Let me know if you have experience in this, but I think that's a 10 out of 10 in terms of dive performance, what it's meant to do for me. Steinhart, it's good, but I would say the loom is definitely not as good as the Omega. This bezel is pretty good, but it's not quite as easy to turn. It's something about the way the grip functions. And then another thing is the visibility. I've complained about this. If I hold it in certain angles, you can't see some of the numbers. And that's just an annoying thing, particularly if you are relying on the GMT hand to read the time. Sometimes you are going to struggle with that 24-hour dial. And of course, it's not a dive a numbered bezel, so that's, I guess, slightly behind as well, even though I think conceptually, of course, you can use that as a dive timing bezel. Less water resistance rating. Of course, 300M, I'm never going to touch that, but objectively, 600 versus 300, that's another thing toward the Omega there. So a big spread I've given here is 7 versus 10. Maybe 7 is a bit harsh, 8 perhaps for Steinhart, but definitely a significant spread here. All right, next thing, versatility. Well, they're both big, and I think strictly speaking, you've seen this on the wrist before, but here it is again. Strictly speaking, this is too big for me, right? The way it sits on the wrist, it really is, beyond what I really should be using. And because of its size and its weight, both of these are, around the 200 gram mark. This one's actually slightly above 200 grams. I think the versatility is somewhat limited, particularly in more formal settings. They're really not as appropriate. Perhaps the Omega's able to sneak in a little bit more. Definitely that one is a little bit too much attention grabbing. It really pulls attention to itself a little bit too much to be versatile in more formal settings. So I've given 7 to both of them because of these factors that I've described. All right, moving on. Durability. I couldn't split it in this case, 8 for both. You know, the Steinhart does have the ceramic insert, the Omega one is a metal insert. But I think the Omega is actually a little bit more overbuilt. It's definitely heavier by a few grams, and just overall it feels like it's slightly more able to take a punch. That is no slouch, right? The Steinhart is no slouch, but this one is also slightly bigger at 45.5 versus 44 millimeters, you know. So I can't really split it. I've given 8 for both. I think they're both well overbuilt divers in that style. Value. Okay, so this one, you know, overpricing of Swiss watches, etc. You can talk about that till the cows come home. I think Steinhart, as I've said before, offer excellent value. You know, for the $500 odd that you pay for this piece, I think it's giving you a lot. It's giving you an excellent movement that is very accurately regulated. You're giving, you know, sapphire, you're getting ceramic insert, you're getting, you know, very well engineered piece, well finished, well fitted, and it's Swiss made. So, you know, I think the value proposition is really up there for Steinhart. You know, for the famous brands like Omega, you know, I think people are starting to question value. You know, you got to ask whether intrinsically, is this worth $5,000, $4,000? Well, I don't think it is, but you're paying for the intangibles here, right? And it's going to be questionable whether you attribute a lot of value to that. You know, this is slightly subjective, but I've given 7 to the Omega. I've given 9 for the Steinhart. I think objectively, you are getting, no doubt, better bang for buck, you know, objective buck for the Steinhart there. Right, okay, brand. Again, you know, what can you say? Omega, if you ask any random person, I think that would be in the top 5, if not the top 3 brands that come to mind these days, right? Not so much watch collectors perhaps, but, you know, any random person on the street really, even ladies who, you know, really there are a lot of ladies watches in the Omega range as well. Brand has got to be 10 out of 10 in terms of just being up there in terms of brand consciousness, awareness, you know, achievements, what they've done in terms of where they've placed themselves. Omega, no doubt in my mind, is a 10 out of 10 in terms of a brand factor. Steinhart has no history really, you know, 21st century brand. It's relatively new, relatively small, relatively unknown. You know, I've given 7 in the past. I guess adjusting this a bit, I'm knocking another score off that. The spread is huge in terms of these particular brands. Part of what you're paying in that, you know, in that $5,000 versus $500 price difference here. Okay, and then X Factor. Well, you know, I like the Steinhart, but it is really borrowing a lot of its X Factor from Rolex. I think the Omega really has a class backing it. You know, this particular piece, I guess, is a Bond watch. It is a Casino Royale watch on Daniel Craig's wrist in that movie. You know, with the Omega James Bond factor and all the other things behind the brand, I've chosen to give an Omega an 8. I've given Steinhart a 6 because really, you know, most of it is taken away from another brand, and the brand itself doesn't have much of a backing. Okay, so that's really what you're getting. You know, I'm not even going to read that out. You can see it for yourself. The spread is hopefully what you would expect when you're comparing pieces like this. In summary, really, you're getting 2, you know, big, overbuilt Swiss automatic dive watches. Right, one's around the 500 mark. This one is closer towards the $5,000 mark. You know, I think the Steinhart is excellent. It's got a great movement. You know, sapphire with ceramic, very good finishing and excellent value. But Omega, you know, what can you say? It needs no introduction. It is superior in all the comparative, direct comparative categories. You know, value being I guess a relative category. You know, design and style are subjective, but I think the brand and X factor, intangibles, there's no question that it's Omega that takes this. Objectively, the Omega definitely, right, has the better movement. It has quality and finishing if you look at this directly in hand, and performance as a dive watch, you still got to give it to the Omega. So guys, hope that's been an informative comparison. Really, it's not a head-to-head duel. It's really just a comparison between these very different value watches. If you enjoy my videos, do consider subscribing. I'm learning new things about horology all the time, and I share it right here on the channel, always aiming to be as objective and unbiased as possible. Thank you again for watching, guys, and as always, I will catch you next time.